Chef Benjamin Blue Abbin here with New Napa Wine. This is our first instructional cooking video in a series I'll be making. Today we'll be making bruschetta. Alright, let's make some bruschetta. As you can see, I got some garlic, and some shredded Parmesan cheese, fresh basil, a couple different kinds of tomatoes. Get these little cherry ones, get some Romas, got my salt and pepper, it's a real important ingredient in anything in cooking, red onion with balsamic vinegar, extra virgin olive oil, and a baguette here. And we're going to make you guys some bruschetta for a little New Napa Wine cooking instructional video. First I'm going to start by cutting the garlic. I've already peeled it and everything, as you can see. You can do it pretty much however you want. I recommend just, slicing it real thin if you can do it. You get the most flavor this way. Sometimes you'll get a big chunk here and there, but as long as you got the right ingredients and everything's fresh, it'll taste good. You can also use a food processor, which is good because then it grinds it up a lot better. But it sometimes mushes it, so I like to just cut it like this. This is Italian style, like they do in prison. They don't have knives, obviously, but sometimes they sneak in razor blades and they cut it up all nice and thin. So I'm just going to add everything to the bowl and kind of go quick here. The basil, wash it off, obviously. Take off the stems. And then we're going to chiffonade it. What I like to do is I like to stack all the leaves. So you stack all the leaves up inside of each other. Sort of like you're making a little package. Good fresh basil love. So just kind of stack it all together. That's probably good. Just take that. And what we're going to do is going to roll it up. Don't get any ideas, you 60s people. Alright, let me just chiffonade it here. Give it a nice thin slice. You can also just kind of go with it if you don't have the cooking skill or the cutting skills, but hey, if you can learn something by watching this, I'm going to be a happier person. Put that in the bowl. Alright, then we'll move on to the tomatoes. Now, what I like to do, I'll take a serrated blade, it's a little bit easier on them, cut off the ends. Usually this is just a Roma kind of dish that I like to do with the bruschettas, just use Romas. Romas aren't really in season right now, so it was kind of rough trying to find these, especially good ripe ones. What we'll do is we'll cut them in half, and then we'll take the knife or a spoon. You probably want to use a spoon if you're not too familiar with knives, and peel out the innards of the tomato. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use the skin, basically. The skin and a little bit of the meat. We don't need the insides. It just kind of makes it messy. So as you can see, I'm just kind of digging around it with the knife. You obviously want to leave some of the tomato in there so that you get the thickness. But like I said, get rid of all those. This is a really good pairing because it's simple to make and usually turns out very, very nice and light. So you're getting your wine and you're also enjoying a little bite with some basil and some garlic, tomatoes. Take your baguette. You can either toast it or you can just cut it up freshly baked. Put it in the oven for a minute, warm it up. I'm gonna put these aside here. Get rid of the mess. It's always nice to have a nice little towel around and wipe your hands off, wipe the knife off when you're cutting from one thing to the other. So what I do here with the tomatoes is cut them nice and thin. As you can see, and just kind of nice, consistent little squares, little happy squares. Music interlude. So I'm going to be trying to do these videos at least once a month, making new recipes, very simple stuff, just little things that go good with wine, or things that I think are different. Bruschetta is a pretty basic dish, but it was actually very convenient because it matched up really well with our last wine pairing last month. I feel bad because it did take me some time to get this video together, but hey, you're getting it now, and that should be good, right? It should make you happy. That's what we're trying to do, is make you guys happy. So, as you can see here, what I've done, just kind of mixed everything together so far. Garlic, the basil, the tomatoes, give that a little time to get some love in the bowl, get some little flavor. Okay. I'm going to add a little salt in there. A couple pinches. You don't have to be too shy. Put a little bit of the Parmesan in there. You can kind of rub it up. I like to make them a little smaller. I shredded this with a cheese grater, and then you can just shred it in your hands a little bit and mix it in there. And as you can see, our flavors are going to be melding really nicely. I'm going to add some more tomato to that, and then I'm going to cut the onion. A little white down. Now when you're cutting an onion, there's so many different ways to do it. I usually like to leave the end on, kind of keeps everything in place. I'm probably going to use only half of this onion because it's so big, and it depends on what you want to do with the recipe, or whether you could just make enough for, you know, everybody to have 3 or 4 pieces, so you could get 4 or 5 people. And with this recipe right here, where I'm just using about 3 or 4 Roma tomatoes, and then a bunch of these little cherry tomatoes also, just kind of add a little something in there. Probably only going to use half, like I said. So what we do is we left the end on, and I'm just going to peel off the first layer right here. Get that out of the way. Set that aside. So there's this huge thing about onions, right? They make you cry. If you can't cry, you don't smile as big, you know? So crying is actually good once in a while. Alright, well, here comes probably the most difficult part. It's getting the onion consistently chopped into nicely diced pieces. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the knife along about a 1/4 inch up from the onion. Put my hand on the top, run it down a couple different times here. 1, 2, 3 cuts. Okay? Then I'm going to run it down laterally. See, you're going to have that. Breathing through your nose actually prevents you from crying when you're cutting an onion. So, not necessarily crying like you're weeping, but you know what I mean. So, we got our cuts. This is going to make it easier on us. Make a nice fine dice here. There's going to be some big chunks here and there. You can kind of just run your knife over it again. Take a look at it. You're going to see some big chunks. If you do find those, either just toss them aside, use them for something else, or just cut them up as you see them. Okay? Perfect. So now we got our onion in there. I'm gonna take some of these cherries, just cut them up and 1/4 them. Now the innards, obviously, in these aren't worth taking out because they're so small. but that'll go good. Once you pour in the balsamic, it'll kind of all meld together. Usually I have some music on when I'm cooking. Try to keep it nice and light vibe where the love really shines through. So that's where you can taste good food. A little bit of love. Okay. So now, as you can see, I'm going to put a little bit more salt. So altogether, probably about 4 nice little pinches of salt. Salt is going to be good for the tomatoes, obviously. Keeps them a little fresher as well. Now just cleaning up while you're cooking really saves you a lot of time. Plus you got to keep your board clean. What I'm going to do is just slice up a little bit of bread here. Get this going. I like to do it at an angle. Just makes them look a little bit more pizzazz, a little longer, a little more of a bite to it. You can pretty much do it any way you want. I'll show you how to make crostinis on our next go around. So then you can kind of just fluff it out a little bit. Okay, I'll put these to the side here. Set them right there. Now we basically got all our mix here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a spoon so my hands don't get dirty again. I'm going to mix this all up. Nice, kind of separate some of the garlic, some of the onions. You'll see that they can stick together. Separate that as best as you can. So I got my salt in there, about 4 pinches. I'm going to use about, I'd probably say, a nice tablespoon, a little less, of ground pepper. So you can imagine you just kind of go for it for a minute. Don't be afraid. Go ahead and mix that in there. I haven't added my oil and my vinegar yet. That's last. I mean, you can wait. Best thing to do is if you're going to make this during the day and have some friends over at night, the best thing to do is just kind of make this mix and not pour in your wet ingredients until you're ready to serve, or about an hour before to get a nice little marinade going. But in this case, there's enough flavor in here to really bring out some stuff in the tomatoes you wouldn't have gotten before. Okay, now pretty much done all the prep for it. So now you could wrap that up with saran wrap, put it in the fridge, and then start pouring in your balsamic and your olive oil an hour before, like I said. It's probably a good idea. You don't need much. So the trick is, measuring is fine. I would say use about 1/4 cup, depending on the ingredient size. Seeing that we used about four tomatoes, half of an onion, about 10 little sprigs of basil. Depending on the size, you can use less or more. I love basil, so it's always good. What I'm going to do is just pour a little bit of this over the top. So I'd say that was probably about 1/4 cup. And then a little balsamic vinegar. Now it's best to go light on this and then taste. And then you can always add more. That's the thing about it. And if you add too much, you can always just cut up more tomatoes, more basil, more onion, and then compensate for any mistakes you made. There's really no mistakes if you're cooking with your heart, so just try to keep that in mind. Alright, there it is. There's a little bruschetta for you. Now you can see, just take it, top it on there. Maybe add a little bit more cheese just for decoration. There you go. Chef Benjamin Blue Evans Benschetta, I like to call it. Perfect.